If you're a fan of VR, you might have heard of Survios. The developer released shooter raw data and VR racer Sprint Vector to much praise. The company's next game is VR boxing game Creed Rise to Glory, which shares the same license as the movies. I had a chance to play the game at E3 and sat down with project and engineering lead Eugene Elkin to discuss Creed. So far, we've seen two types of VR games. We've gotten the realistic thrill of the fight and the more arcadey Knockout League, which channels Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! I asked Eugene what kind of boxing game Creed is striving to be.
Well, we actually wanted to strike somewhere in the middle. We didn't want to go the full realistic route, and we didn't want to do the Punch-Out where you memorize a pattern and there's really only certain moves you can do. We wanted to strike something that's a cinematic boxing experience. The experience when you watch a movie and imagine what's it like to be the guy, what's it like to be Adonis, or even like when you're picturing a fight, like the dream sequence fight where you can duck and everything goes slow-mo. We really wanted to capture that. So while it still feels like a real fight, you really get the fight or flight response. The idea is it still make it feel super cinematic, like you're inside a movie.
As a boxing fan, I was curious to hear if a boxing pro would be able to perform better at the game than the average gamer.
I think potentially we've brought in some boxers to give us advice, on certain combos and how a fight should flow. And watching a fight is really impressive because right away I keep telling first-time players, stay light on your feet, get in a boxer stance, really try to move around and dodge the punches. A lot of first-time players can't do it, but boxers will get in there and they're able to do it right away. What's interesting when you watch people play that are not boxers, eventually they figure out the right techniques, something a boxer does. They'll get in the right stance, they're not locking or planting their feet in. They're starting to jab and take their time and really look for the windows and opportunity.
Melee represents interesting challenges for VR to overcome. For instance, in real life, if you're gonna throw a hook at someone, your fist would stop soon after it makes contact with your opponent's head. In VR, however, with no real-life opponent actually in front of you, your hand would just clip through them. Developer Survios has implemented what it calls phantom melee tech to overcome this issue. I asked Eugene to elaborate on that system.
We're calling it phantom melee tech, and this technology we developed, and this is our initial prototype. The first goal we set out before Creed, when we started working on Creed, how do we make punching feel good? And how do we make getting hit actually feel good? And through lots of iterations, what we settled on was this thing we're calling phantom melee tech. And it has several parts to it. One part is when you collide with an in-game object, what happens? Right? We want the glove to stay where you hit it, and yet we don't want to take control away from the user. So we're like, all right, let's desynchronize you so you still see this phantom, this ghost hand, but your real glove, what's doing damage in the game, stays behind. And that teaches a player, once you hit something, it'll stay there. Go back and get your fist. Interesting thing starts to happen as people are fighting. They realize the penalty they incur by losing their hand. They'll start stopping on the object, and that really makes punching feel really interesting, almost realistic and juicy. So you'll see people, when there's a wall there, they'll stop on the wall as if they're hitting a real object. The second part with the phantom melee attack, how do we make getting hit feel interesting? So we can actually, at certain different times of the game, depending on the context, we just synchronize you. So you get hit so hard, you slide back out of your body. And rather than puppeteering, you usually puppeteer the character. You control the avatar one-to-one, and when you get knocked out of your body, the avatar goes in this crazy kind of stumble move depending on what happened to him. In order to sync back up your body, you have to do the same move. You have to really kind of like pretend like you just got hit, and that engages your mind and your whole body and kind of like, oh my God, I'm really in this. I just got hit. So that is the essence, and it just keeps going forward. We kept iterating what happens when you get KO'd. We knock you out completely out of your body into this like ghost tunnel. So there's lots of interesting parts that make this really feel juicy. So everything is combined together in the tech we're calling phantom melee tech.
Following up on Eugene's comments, I asked him if the team was thinking of implementing phantom melee tech in potential forthcoming VR games.
We hope so, and that was really the idea behind it. With every single game we've done so far, we've created some sort of tech. Not necessarily just for us. Once we create the tech, we usually want other people to use it. With Sprint Vector, it was locomotion, and at GDC we gave this whole talk how we did our locomotion because we want other people to use it. We think it's what's great for us is great for the entire VR industry. So you can definitely extend it to like having an axe or any kind of melee we think can benefit from this.
Will the game be able to detect how hard you hit? Is it going to be beneficial to swing harder?
Oh, absolutely. Right now, before we give demos, we tell everybody. And that's part of what the minigame is about, it teaches you, is how to punch for real. We're tracking your velocity, the distance traveled, the direction of your fist compared to your velocity vector. Everything matters. So to have a proper punch, and as you were saying, do boxers do better than regular people? They tend to because they know how to punch better. And as you keep playing, you realize the little things that make it a more efficient punch, and you naturally just start doing it. So speed and velocity and how hard you punch absolutely matters in this game.
Having played the game, Creed, perhaps like Sprint Vector before it, is shaping up to be a physical workout. I asked Eugene if the game was designed to be a great workout.
Well, I don't know if it was our intention initially, when we set out to make a really fun, compelling boxing, premium boxing game. And the idea was we want to really hit that fight or flight response. And in order to do that, in order to make that boxing feel real, it becomes a workout. And then we just really put more on, like, oh my God, this is fun. You can work out with this. So we spend more and more time adding on to it to do that. For example, the dodging, that tends to engage your entire core. So it can absolutely become a workout tool. It makes people sweat, that's for sure.
Speaking of sweat, is that like a concern for you guys? Like, you know, the sweat in the headset and things like that? Or are you just encouraging people to take breaks and like wipe off the headset? Or what is your philosophy on that?
Well, with this game, it's your exertion is how much you really put into it, right? You don't have to go kind of crazy. It's fun when you do. If you act like a boxer, it tends to feel like a real boxing match. So different people will have different level of how much exertion they can put into it, and it's actually part of the reason why we have a stamina system to kind of equal out the playing ground for most people. So even if you're super fit, your in-game character might get tired before you, and that can be adjusted as you go through the game. But that kind of slows it down a little bit. So it's not a match you go in there and see how fast we can burn you out. We don't want you to go in there and go, I beat the guy, now I'm like, I want to die.
Is this game based off the movies, or is it its own separate thing?
It's its own separate thing. The game is definitely in a Creed universe. You'll see familiar characters, you'll find some new characters. It explores things that happened in the first movie that might happen later, things they might have hinted in a movie. It's a story we worked together with MGM to create. So it resides in the Creed universe, but it's not really tied to Creed 1 or Creed 2 right now.
So did you guys approach MGM to make the game, or how's that relationship been like?
Well, MGM is actually our partner. So we wanted to make a Melee game for a very long time, and they had this great IP, an IP we love, like Creed, Rocky. We love those movies, and it was just a perfect opportunity to make a game together. It's our first IP game, and we're super excited about it.
Historically, a lot of movie licensed games tend to be duds. I asked Eugene how Creed was going to avoid the pitfalls of its predecessors.
Well, I think the reason that tends to happen sometimes, the game that's tied to a movie comes out and maybe doesn't get very good reviews, is it's constricted and bound to the events that happen to the movie. There are certain restrictions when you make a movie game, and hence this is not a movie game. What was nice about MGM, didn't put any restrictions. What we can do, the events in the game that had to happen, they let us make the game we wanted to make, and it's about Creed, it lives in a Creed universe, but it's not really bound to be a certain game just because it's tied to a Creed IP. So I don't think we didn't have the same pitfalls, I guess, that potentially some games that are tied to a movie IP might have.
Taking a step back, with VR being a small but growing medium, some developers have voiced profitability concerns within the industry. Survios was one of the few developers who found success early on with the release of Raw Data, the first VR game to make over $1 million in sales. Its subsequent game Sprint Vector also found great success critically. I asked Eugene to discuss VR's landscape here.
I think that concern might be better like in the marketing. I'm a dev and I really care about just making the games we love and fun to play. I mean, really, I think part of the reason we're so successful is we make the games we want to play. We want to make them active, we want to break certain rules that they say, the community right now says, oh, you can't do certain things in VR. You can't run fast in VR, it's going to make people sick. We make the games we want to make, and I think we're successful in that because we tend to experiment a lot.
Finally, I asked Eugene to provide his thoughts on the current state of VR.
I'm super excited what's happening in VR. I mean, with every single E3 and GDC, we see more and more VR. So while maybe the market hasn't grown as fast as some of us would like, it's definitely growing. As we're seeing just how much VR is out on the floor here today. So it's super exciting. Like with every single game that comes out, nobody looks at it as competition right now. It's just like, yes, we need more games, we need more people to buy the headsets because it's awesome.
Creed Rise to Glory is set to release within the fall of 2018. I want to thank Eugene for this interview and for all my patrons who supported me to make this crowdfunded video possible. If you like this video, please consider supporting me by donating to the Patreon via the link below, where you'll get early access to videos, exclusive content, and more. Thanks.